Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everybody. So excited to be here with you tonight on Community Conversations. As you might have noticed, I am not Ethan. He is not here tonight. I promise he is definitely okay. He is in the process of doing some filming out in Los Angeles. So I'm sure, could be popping into the comments at some point, but that he will not be here with us tonight. But I'm excited to be here with you all. This is one of my favorite streams to get to host because it is all about advocacy, community, and actually having a conversation. So super excited to be here with you. I already see Nathan, I see Spence. So good to see you all. And typically we'll kick off with asking some sort of fun questions. So as people jump on, feel free to say hi, let us know where you're from. I see Janine from Texas. And our question for tonight, for anybody who watched Faith and OCD Roundtable last week, you saw I was on with Dr. Emily Bailey, and she gave me a question right before we jumped on here because I hadn't thought of one. So our question for tonight is going to be, if you were a Disney character, who would you be? If you were a Disney character, who would you be? That is our question for tonight. So as we go through our disclaimers, feel free to let me know, if you were a Disney character, who would you be? And I do see Grace, hi from Michigan. I see Amy. I see Sam. Yes, hello, not Ethan. If you just jumped on, I was sharing with everyone that I am not Ethan, but I am super happy to be here as he is kind of off doing some work and some filming stuff right now. Well, Tinkerbell for sure. Yes, awesome. Love that, Janine. If others can chime in as I go through our disclaimers, if you could be a Disney character, or if you were a Disney character, who would you be? And while we are having some of those come in, and hi from Greater Boston, hi from Michigan. I'm going to go ahead and go into some of our disclaimers for tonight. So just want to note, this live stream is educational and is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please work with your provider or contact a local clinician. You can use the IOCDF's online resource directory at iocdf.org/find-help to locate a trained clinician near you. The International OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline, or if you're in crisis or if you're ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. You can also access online at www.988lifeline.org. Go to your local emergency room or call 911. We want to create a safe space. I know that you all know this. We want to be kind. We want to be respectful to everyone, especially on this stream where it really is about community conversation. Because at the end of the day, we're here to support one another. But a note that this is being recorded, it's being broadcast on several social media platforms. So please keep that in mind as you comment. And again, we ask everyone just to be really supportive of one another tonight and always. So glad to be here with you tonight. And I'm going to catch up on our comments really quick to see if we had any other. Nobody's really taking me up. I have two people who took me up on the what Disney character would you be? So thank you for that, Janine Tinkerbell and Spence Jiminy Cricket. Yes, thank you. Anybody else who wants to chime in for this? It will make my heart happy. Matt, hello. So good to see you from the UK. And Garcia, thank you for being here today. And yes, Matt, thank you. Thank you for the comment on the new podcast, Obsessions and Confessions. Callie and I are having a great time with that. And Sam, still thinking of an answer. I totally get that. Absolutely. So community conversations, this stream, as you all know, if you are folks who tune into this often, is usually pretty loose in terms of kind of how Ethan runs it. So I would love to have you jump in with things that you want to talk about, with stories, with questions, with, Matt, Jack Sparrow. Yes. And Jessica, I'm sorry, I'm not Ethan, but I am so glad that you're here, and hopefully I'll be a good representation of Ethan tonight. I just talked to him shortly before the stream, and he tells everyone hello, and I know that he will miss y'all tonight. So let's go ahead and jump in. I want to talk about a couple of things tonight, and I think the first thing that I really want to dive into, and of course want to hear what you all have to say about this, is the idea that living life sometimes becomes the biggest exposure. So I'm going to talk about what this means for me. And I'm curious. Sorry. First, I'm going to answer Matt's question. What Disney character would I like to be? Um, I should have thought of that since I was the one to ask the question. Maybe Snow White, because I love all like the little animals and stuff. I will say when we go to Disney, I get super excited about anything pink Disney princessy. So I'll be, yeah, thank you, Amy. So maybe Snow White. No, I love Belle from Beauty and the Beast. I think that is going to be it for me. My story when I was a kid. And as I look back, maybe there was some element of OCD in this too when we think about Disney characters. I loved Beauty and the Beast. And I was always really, really concerned because I had harm OCD with folks being hurt or with bad things happening to people, worried that they would be my fault. And oh, you like Disney, but would not want to be a Disney character. And Mickey Mouse, but the OG Mickey. Yes, the OG Mickey. But yeah, so when I was a kid, watching Beauty and the Beast, I absolutely fell in love with the Beast because I loved animals. I always kind of loved the underdog, I and yes, Marvel and Star Wars movies definitely count for this. Yeah, Snow White and Belle. Thank you. So yeah, so Beauty and the Beast, I fell in love with the Beast, and I would be just like every movie that I watched when I was a kid. If there was an animal or an underdog character, I would worry about it the entire movie. And I guess I technically still do that now, but less so because I use my skills and tools. But with Beauty and the Beast in particular, I really had a tough time with it at the very end where the Beast, I hope this isn't a spoiler. I think folks have probably all seen Beauty and the Beast, but where the Beast turns back into the prince. And I know that that's supposed to be a really, really happy thing. But it actually really upset me as a child because I love the Beast. I was worried that it hurt him in some way, shape, or form. I was worried that, I don't know, that Belle was only going to like him now for his appearance. I had all of these really big worries as a 5 or a 6-year-old. And I actually remember laying on our floor next to the fireplace when I was in kindergarten, first grade, and like just crying and asking my mom, like, please bring back the Beast. Why is the Beast going away? So that's become kind of a joke throughout our life. And it's something kind of with Ethan and I around Beauty and the Beast. And I don't know why I'm telling the story, but somehow I just kind of went off this weird journey. But it's something Ethan and I often talk about. And it really does relate to so much of what plagued me as a kid, where I wanted to make sure every single person was okay, including those in movies and film. So I see, yeah, kids do love the Frozen characters, probably Yoda. Hi, Isostasia. Hi, everyone. Yes, and Valerie does always poke fun about Beauty and the Beast. So there's all these Beauty and the Beast kind of ties for us. Awesome. Thank y'all. So I forget if I started to say what I was going to dive into, but we're 8 minutes in, so I will actually dive into this. But I started to say I want to talk tonight about life as the biggest exposure. And Phyllis, we will not judge you for not liking Disney. It is totally fine. You can like whatever you want to like, and we love you and think you're awesome. So that's great. But in terms of life being the biggest exposure, so for folks who might be familiar with my story, I navigated so much of life with undiagnosed, with untreated OCD, and was really struggling, particularly in some really public roles where I really thought I'm in ministry and there were people looking up to me. I felt like I needed to have it all together. I was really fearful of getting treatment because of a lot of the messaging that I had been given throughout seminary and in religion. And when I finally went through treatment, it really started to save and change my life. My OCD had latched onto a lot of really difficult tragedies that I was navigating with the community at that particular time. But I think the really big thing for me was it was so challenging. And I very much relate to that, Nathan. I wasn't officially diagnosed until 24, 25 as well. Actually, no, I think it was 25. And I had been very much in the mode of letting compulsions run my life by that point, because that's how I got through each and every day. But I had also spent my entire life beating myself up. I had spent my entire life hating myself. I'm curious if others can relate to that. And I really defined who I was as a human by my intrusive thoughts. So I spent so much time thinking, well, if anyone knew, what would they think of me? Related to harm thoughts, to sexual thoughts, to false memories, to religious thoughts, to any of these things we can think. At least in my mind, I had the worst thoughts in the whole world. And if anybody knew, they wouldn't want me to be a minister anymore. They wouldn't want me to care for their kids. They wouldn't even want me to be out walking the streets. That's very much how I felt. I'm curious, again, if others want to comment, if you have felt the same throughout your journey. So for me, when I actually started to get better for the first time in my 20s, um, I started to self sabotage a little bit. And I didn't actually even recognize at the time that I was doing this. I didn't know why I was doing this until much later. But I was intentionally keeping myself stuck in some ways because I was really afraid to step forward with life because I didn't think that I could deserve it. I didn't think that I deserved to actually have a beautiful life. I didn't think that I deserved to laugh or to smile or to feel emotions. And yeah, and Nathan, OCD caused you to have terrible behavior while growing up, and Sean agreeing to this too, and why you kept it to yourself for so long. That kind of shame piece, yeah, absolutely. So, and Jen as well, yeah, I think so many of us have felt this way, and it's so challenging. So for me, again, I was kind of starting to get better, and I was hitting these stuck points. And this was like 2018, 2019. And it was like, okay, well, I'm doing these exposures. Why am I not getting better? Why am I not able to fully start to live my life? And for me, I was still spending so much time ruminating, just trying to make sure that I was a good person. But I also later found out that there was kind of this element of self sabotage where I was intentionally still engaging in compulsions to keep myself stuck because of all of the intrusive thoughts, not feeling like I deserved to get better. A really big turning point actually for me, which folks on this stream might really relate to. Oh, and Katya, so good to see you. So good to see you. A big turning point for me, actually, for those of you who know Ethan in this stream, was becoming friends with Ethan. It was long before we dated or anything like that. But he became one of my closest friends in advocacy. And he was one of the first people in my life. I don't talk about this very often, but he was one of the first people who actually, I don't know, when I spent time with him, made me think that I might actually deserve to get better. And he, in the way that he does, gave me very much permission to actually love and care about myself and to start to recognize that, wait, I'm not defined by my intrusive thoughts. And also, I can navigate all of these things and I still deserve to live a really beautiful life. Now, that was such a big jump for me because I had spent like all of my life thinking I don't deserve anything. So, the biggest exposure by proxy for me became giving myself permission to step out into life and to actually enjoy it. So this was really, really tough. Some of you all have heard me talk about this before. Pink, if you see me wear pink like all the time, and I have pink like on everything, literally everywhere. It's not just because I like the color pink. It's because it's my exposure color. It was my favorite color from the time I was a little kid. I wore everything pink. And when I got older and I went through this period of feeling like I didn't deserve anything, like I didn't deserve to be happy, I stopped wearing everything pink. I cut off all of my hair, which is completely fine, but that wasn't something that was necessarily authentic to me. I dressed in a completely different way. And oh, Sam, friends. Yes, we really were. We really were friends. He was my best friend. But I dressed in a completely different way. And actually, one of my first exposures of stepping out into life was my therapist at the time actually encouraging me to give myself permission to wear things that made me smile. Now, you see, now everything is like decked out in pink, and that's still an exposure for me, but a beautiful one. But at the time, I remember even like wearing a pink sock because it kind of made me smile and feeling like I so didn't deserve it. I remember Eeyore actually is like my favorite character of all time. I remember putting on Crocs that had a little Eeyore button on it and feeling like I don't deserve this because it makes me happy, because it makes me smile. And that was an exposure to step out into life, doing things, wearing things that like sort of made me get happy, even if I felt like I didn't deserve it. And yeah, Sam, I see you relating to this too. Color included. Yeah, I think so many people relate to this. And it was such a big deal. And for me, so much yellow. Okay. Makes you so happy. Yeah. So for me, pink kind of became the representation of that as I moved through treatment. And still to this day, I would say stepping out into life for me is one of the biggest exposures when I feel like I don't deserve it. But it's also one of the most meaningful exposures of all. So I actually remember when I got to the point when I was moving out of treatment, and my therapist was like, all right, you're in a good place to do this on your own. And of course, we tapered and did all of the things like that. But I remember being like, no, I'm definitely like not ready, right? Like I'm still kind of having intrusive thoughts. I'm still ruminating. And of course, now I know that having intrusive thoughts has nothing to do with recovery. We all have intrusive thoughts. Recovery is defined by using our skills and tools and how we respond to those thoughts. But it didn't make sense to me that she thought I was in a place to be my own therapist or to go out and to do this on my own. And it was really hard for me. I remember, frankly, and I don't always say this, but frankly, I was pretty pissed off. I really, really was. I was like, who are you to think that? And it was the best gift that she could have ever given me, because I felt like she kind of gave me a kick in the pants that forced me to step into my life. And it was the biggest exposure, in part because I felt like I wasn't capable, but also in part because I felt like I didn't deserve it. And I will say today, and honestly, it still feels icky to even say this out loud, but I am deserving of love and happiness and joy. And I want you to hear you are too. Every single one of you. And I want to say, like, yes, you. I say this in every talk I give. It's like if you're looking around like, who, me? It's like, yes, you. You are worthy of experiencing joy, even if it starts with an exposure. You're worthy of doing things that are meaningful to you, no matter what OCD says. And sometimes that first exposure is even just stepping into that and wearing a color that OCD has made you feel like you weren't worthy of wearing. I'm so glad folks are resonating with this. I'm curious if others have had experiences similar to this and what living life for you as an exposure looks like. I've had this conversation actually with a couple folks this week who have talked about the fact that they've been in a sea of compulsions for such a long time that there's actually some element of putting those aside, even in treatment, that feels really scary, and that it actually feels really scary to step into life. Ethan talks about how when he started to step into life without compulsions kind of dictating his life, it was really scary because there were some areas that he failed in, and he didn't have kind of OCD or compulsions to fall back on. It was just, I actually just have to feel these emotions. I actually just have to go through this process. That's really, really, really hard. I'm going to catch up on reading with stuff. So I'm going to go back to 712. So Matt, Matt, I'm so sorry you've been going through such a tough time. Haven't been triggered like this in a long time, but I've been putting all the tools of self-compassion, mindfulness, and really identifying what my values are. Thank you for bringing up values. We're going to talk about that tonight too. I'm choosing to always reach toward my values no matter what. You, Katie, and the community always inspire me to do just that. Thank you. And thank you, Matt. You do the same for us. We are all on this journey together. And that's one of the things I like about community conversations is we're literally all hosting it together and we are all inspiring each other. So thank you for inspiring us, even as you're kind of stepping through these really challenging times. And we are definitely with you in the midst of that. Oh, yeah. So I say, good morning. Just woke up and can feel OCD starting work today. Feel OCD starts working today. So I'm curious what others have to say about this. I've talked to a lot of folks recently about OCD really popping up first thing in the morning and especially before bed. So I'm wondering if others have that experience as well. And the biggest thing that I would say, if you are just starting the day and you're like, oh, OCD is already here, my favorite thing to do with this is to change our attitude about it, even if we're acting as if. And I swear this is not a toxic positivity thing. I am just as frustrated with OCD and the experience of OCD as the next person, trust me. But I really love, and Shala Nicely is the one who initially turned me on to this concept, the idea of when we're responding to OCD, putting shoulders back and doing it with the utmost confidence. And I actually kind of see it as lying to my OCD. So waking up in the morning, and if I'm like, rather than going, the intrusive thought is here, it's already here, actually showing with my body, psh, bring it on, OCD. If you are out there, I am so ready to use all of my skills and tools to make OCD smaller. And y'all might think I'm weird because if you ever see me in my house, I literally actually sometimes stand up and say this out loud to myself. I'm like, yeah, OCD, thank you for that really awesomely disturbing intrusive thought. And I am so excited to not engage with it so that I can step toward my values. And that might sound really silly, but I really love this idea that we can see each of those moments as an opportunity, and you are worthy of seeing each of those moments as an opportunity. Yeah, doubt is incredibly sinister. Yeah, friends. I'm so glad that, well, not glad that folks resonate with some of this, but appreciate being on the journey together. And yes, Matt, you are such a warrior too. Um, yeah, absolutely. The qualities deserving of praise are those that you have no control over. Yeah. And that's not, I actually think every single person, is deserving of love and compassion and meaning in their life. Um, let's see. Pink alarm clocks. I love y'all are having such great conversations. Um, Thank you, thank you, thank you. Jen at 720, I had to completely learn how to live life not being a compulsion. I answered to OCD for so long, I didn't know who I really was. Still learning. It's a journey. Yeah, Jen, I so relate to this. I think I had to, relearn so many aspects of life. And I'm sitting here, I'm always really, there's so much about my story that I tell. And to be honest, in advocacy, there's still some aspects that I'm not ready to share. And I think that's okay. I always want to be open about that because I want everyone to know it's not black or white. You can share lots of aspects of your story and have some that you're not ready to share. But for me, when I moved into recovery, it was kind of like I woke up in my life for the first time and I kind of looked around and was like, what is this life that I'm living? Because I felt like, Jen, I'm wondering if you can relate to this. I felt like I had been answering to OCD for such a long time that I was kind of in a trance through my life. And it was finally, I woke up and kind of looked around and was like, how did I get here? How did I get into these really, really unhealthy spaces? And it was incredibly challenging and had to then shift through some real life changes. And I think often that happens for folks where we almost go through the motions of life and then we come out the other side from OCD and it's like, wow, how did I get here? And also I have to learn how to live for the very first time, or I have to learn what it means to be in a healthy relationship, or how to step forward, or how to do my tax. Well, I don't want to think about doing taxes because I need to do my taxes. I take back all of that. We can delete that part, but learning how to do life. Wendy, so good to see you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So glad that you are here. Yeah, and Matt, the bring it on mindset. I really love that. And again, I kind of feel silly talking about it, and yet it's something that I use in my life every single day. And I like to think of it from the perspective of the whole reason that we do exposures. Is because of that response prevention part, right? That the exposure has to happen first. The level of anxiety has to go up in order for us to engage in that response prevention and to show our brain that we don't need to respond right now. But I think about when a trigger comes up in everyday life, even if we're not actively doing an exposure, it's the same thing. I think of it actually as life kind of giving us a really stellar opportunity to make OCD smaller, because we can only engage in that response prevention when OCD or that intrusive thought pops out of its cave. Um, and again, I remember in my own journey, somebody kind of telling me that and saying, like, wow, you have such a cool opportunity. So glad your biggest trigger popped up today. And I was like, what are you talking about? But the bring it on mindset, even if I don't believe it in that moment, actually really helps me feel the confidence that I need to step through and use those skills and tools. Um, yeah, thank you, Deleuze. The last kind of aspect of OCD for you is rumination. I love that you're talking about mindfulness, eliminating those kind of tendencies for rumination. With the rumination piece, and I'm glad you brought this up. It was actually on my topic list from questions that folks dropped me on Instagram to talk about tonight. So I had somebody actually, let's see if I can find it. I had somebody ask how do we stop ruminating? Is it different from other types of compulsions? I had somebody ask, do I need a different type of treatment if I'm ruminating? And I think it's really important to note. So I'm so glad you brought this up, that rumination, it's just another compulsion. It really is, but it can be, I think, harder to pick out. And it was for me. I didn't know for the longest time, one, that ruminating was a compulsion, and two, that I was even doing it, because it can get so mixed up with our intrusive thoughts. And for me, I think it was really tough to differentiate where an intrusive thought ended and where does the rumination begin. And I know I've talked about this on other streams, but what has been the most helpful for me is to think about that initial intrusive thought, that what if is the obsession. So that first thing, I think for me, that's always, what if I'm a bad person? Or what if I'm a dangerous person? Those are like, oof, that's what it comes back to for me over and over again. Or what if everyone hates me? Okay, that's the obsession. Anything that I do to engage with that is the compulsion, is the rumination. So as soon as I move from what if I'm a bad person to, well, what about that thing that I did that one time in third grade? Or let me think through all the things that make me not a bad person. Or, well, how would I handle this next situation if it came up? All of those things, even if I'm not doing something physical or checking, that's a compulsion, because it's me engaging with that intrusive thought. It's me trying to either make that thought go away, trying to disprove it, trying to prove that I could handle it if it happened. And that's been really helpful for me to even piece apart, or to kind of parse out, where is the intrusive thought and then where is the compulsion? Where is that rumination? And that doesn't mean, kind of going back to that compassion piece, that we get to beat ourselves up for engaging in rumination. I used to do that. That has definitely never been something that's helpful. If we go, I'm ruminating, I'm so angry, I just have to stop. Yeah, that's not going to help. I think we get to give ourselves compassion and choose to step in a different direction. So I love the concept of being compassionate without being satisfied. We can go, oof, okay, I'm catching myself ruminating. This might be a great opportunity to do something different. Maybe I'm going to plug into the five senses. Maybe I'm going to do something to come back to the moment. And if I catch myself ruminating again 10 seconds from now, I get to do the same thing. And every time it's this compassionate commitment, this opportunity to build a muscle where we can notice that we're ruminating and make the compassionate choice to come back. And just like going to the gym, over time, like that first lift that you do is really challenging. I shouldn't talk about lifting because I know nothing about lifting, and y'all are going to think who do know about lifting, like Tom Smalley is probably somewhere like, what is she talking about? I'll talk about running. The first time you go out and run that mile, that feels really, really tough. And actually, I'm an ultra marathon runner, and I remember the first time I actually joined the track team. This was long before collegiate running or anything like that. I joined the track team in like ninth or 10th grade before I even got into cross country, actually, because I liked a boy and I wanted to be on the team with him. And I ran my first mile and I got so sick. I won't get into that for folks who might navigate emetophobia, but got very, very ill and thought, how am I ever going to be able to run further than a mile? And it's kind of nuts that, however many years later, 20 years later or so, I race 30 plus mile races. But it's really that same same thing with OCD and with rumination. That first time that you're bringing yourself back, it's like running that initial mile where you're like, how could I do that? And how could I do that all day, every day? Well, once we kind of build that muscle, you're not having to actively think about continuing to do that. It just becomes something that's natural. So sorry, I went on like a whole rumination train here, maybe ruminating about ruminating. Um, yeah, I love, Sean, what you said at 7:21. In the morning, it's accepting that it's going to be there. I know the thoughts are going to be there, but knowing I have control over whether I or not I engage with them. I think that's such a powerful thing. And I know we often say in the OCD community, whatever we resist persists, right? And that's true. Like when the thought pops up, as soon as we're like, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about a pink elephant, or more realistically, for many folks who navigate intrusive thoughts in all sorts of different capacities. It might be, I don't want to think about being a murderer. I don't want to think that really intense sexually intrusive thought. I don't want to think about this really scary religious thought, all of those things. And as soon as we don't want to think about those, they come on even stronger. But by accepting their presence, it's never accepting the content of the thought. It's not saying that that thing is true, but you're accepting the fact that that thought's going to be there. And that, you know what? We can step through that. We cannot engage with it, even if it's there and even if it feels really scary. And there is so much power in that. Um, yeah, I love Deleuze. Don't really do anything besides rumination or ruminating, so I need to break that. Yeah, I really relate to that, and I think for so many people, that can be one last little carrot where it's like, okay, well, we're not engaging in physical compulsions, and I know for me it was, why am I not getting better? And I actually, in many cases, didn't realize that I was ruminating, or didn't realize that even after exposures, I was undoing, or trying to make sure after the exposure that I was still a good person, or that I felt bad for doing the exposure. All of those things can be rumination and can keep us stuck. But kind of the neat thing about that is, in what you're saying, you're recognizing that you're doing that, which means we have an opportunity to step forward in a different direction. Um, let's see. Yeah, proportional response to intrusive thoughts. Absolutely. Do some rumination also. Yeah, yeah, and I see isostasia, you're talking about things being the worst in the morning. Absolutely. And yeah, I've had this conversation with folks a lot, of both in the morning, and then also at night. And I think sometimes at night for folks, there's a lot of layers. We're tired from the day. We might not be able to have, all of that energy that we had earlier on to continue to fight. And that can be really challenging. Um, Let's see. Deleuze, ruminating definitely gets me stuck more than anything else, because the more I ruminate, the more vulnerable I become to doing more damaging compulsions. Yeah, and I like to think of, at least for me, I try to think of, all compulsions equally. So if there are lots of compulsions that you are not engaging in, I really still want you to see that as a win. Those are still really, really, really big steps forward. And also, we can recognize, but all of these compulsions do contribute to kind of this OCD cycle. So the more that we're able to kind of wipe out, or to use our skills and tools around, or to use non-engagement responses as opposed to responding to the thought, the more we're going to be able to step toward our values. Yeah, the anxiety doesn't actually go away when ruminating. And I think this is an interesting point too, where really the reason, if we're honest, and we don't always talk about this, the reason we often start engaging in compulsions is they maybe work. Like, please don't quote me on this. I'm like scared Brenna behind the scenes going to have me saying compulsions work. Compulsions do not work. But that first time, we might get a little tiny relief in our anxiety, or in our guilt, our fear, our shame. And that's how it was for me. It was, even in the simplest example, when I was younger, um, the first time I checked the stove and took a picture just to make sure it was off, it's like, oh, okay, I have a picture on my phone. I guess I'm good with this. Now we know that that doesn't last. Within 4 or 5 months of this specific instance I'm thinking of, I was checking my stove for 8 hours at a time and taking thousands of pictures, because I still couldn't get that certainty. So it's like early on, we feel like we get maybe this tiny bit of relief that we can never get again. And it just makes us sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. And I think what you're talking about with anxiety, yeah, it doesn't go away when ruminating. It doesn't go away with any other compulsion. And maybe that first time when you thought back through that childhood memory, maybe you had that second of relief, but then OCD came back. And that's what always happens. Even if we get that little kind of dip from a compulsion the first time, OCD is always going to come back stronger. Compulsions never keep us safe. They never get us better. They never get us closer to our values. What they ultimately do is make us sicker. And they pretend because of that little dip, maybe that first time, that they're helping us. They never, never, never are. Um, Sean, I felt like I not only had to relearn how to live, I had to rediscover who I was and what I liked and disliked. Yeah, Ethan, and I know he's not here tonight, but y'all can ask him about this when he comes back. I think in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whenever he's back. But he often talks about how when he moved out of his kind of journey with, well, we're always on a journey with OCD, but when he moved into the recovery part of his journey, that it felt like someone like kicked him off a bus and he was on the side of the road, like, what do I even like? Who am I? What do I want to do? And that's really hard. And Sean, I'm curious, and maybe you can chime into this later on that I can get into the comments. I'm curious, what has that been like to rediscover who you were, or really for anyone? What is that process like in discovering what you like and dislike? Because I know that can be scary, but I also think there's something really cool about it. I'll say for me, I was going to say I'm a different person than I was 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I actually think, as I'm saying that, it's less than I'm a different person. It's more that I'm finally letting myself be the person that I actually am. And I'm actually able to be that authentic version of me because OCD isn't covering it up all the time. And there's sometimes this really neat process, and it can be really scary, but there's also this cool process of self-discovery of, wow, I didn't even know I liked doing that. I was spending so much time caught in this OCD cycle. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? Yes. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. Who would have thunk that I could have been really good at this thing and really love this thing? Um, yeah. So Wendy, it's 7:24. So what are your thoughts on this? Is it okay to congratulate yourself when you realize that something that has triggered you no longer does? Is that okay, or would that be considered reassurance? Yeah. So such a great question. So I always tell folks, like, literally anything can be compulsive, and it's all based on the function. Like if we are doing something for the sole purpose of getting rid of fear, guilt, shame, anxiety, sure, anything can be compulsive. But how you're describing this, I actually think is super, super value driven. I always am a big fan of celebrating our wins. I remember I had like some harm kind of objects that were really triggering for me. And I actually remember the first time I saw a crime show where some of them showed up, that I realized like an hour later, wait, I didn't go down an OCD spiral. I was freaking excited. And I deserve to be. You deserve to be too. I think the only time it becomes reassurance is if afterward we're doing that repetitively to prove to ourselves that we are actually not in fact triggered, and that it's okay that we're not triggered. If we're doing that, that might become compulsive. But just you celebrating and congratulating yourself, realizing that you have done something or faced something that would normally trigger you, and you have chosen to keep stepping forward with your life, like celebrate all day long. I'm a huge fan of that. Um, yeah, seeing those difficulties as opportunities. Amy at 7:26, the bring it on attitude is being ready to do whatever it takes to not let OCD interfere with your values. Yes, 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 yes. And I was going to ask y'all this tonight, and I'm going to keep reading through comments, so it might take me a minute to get down there because y'all have so much to say and so many awesome things to say. I probably have a lot to say too. I feel like I'm talking a lot. I guess because I'm the only one on here, but um, I always like to ask the question, what are you willing to risk all of the scary stuff that OCD is telling you could happen for? Like, what's your why? What is that why? And I think that can really help when we're thinking from a values perspective of this like warrior attitude that Amy's talking about, of this, I am willing to do whatever it takes in favor of moving toward all of these things that I care about. So I'm curious for you, what is your why? What is that why? I know I've talked about mine before in the stream. I'm happy to do that too. I have quite a few, but I'm curious for you all what that is. And Amy also says the intrusive thoughts are spam. Acknowledge them, move on. Engaging with them is like downloading malware. Yes, yes, yes. So I really like the analogy that yes, intrusive thoughts are spam, and that just like everybody else, spam pops up, not just for people with OCD. I mean, everybody has intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts are just thoughts. People with OCD might not notice them in the same way because their brains don't get sticky in the same ways that ours do. But how I like to think about that is they have spam that comes into their brain, they have junk mail, we have junk mail. For us, that junk mail filter just isn't necessarily working correctly. That spam folder isn't filtering everything into it. So it doesn't mean, that our thoughts are different or that they're less spam. It just means that somebody without OCD, their spam filter is like working in a very, very high way. And maybe ours isn't. So maybe, and how I kind of see treatment is for a little bit, we have to label things as spam. We're like, oh, my brain didn't do that immediately, but I'm just going to trust that this is spam and I'm going to label it and I'm going to dump it in that spam folder. And just like we do with our email, if we label things spam for a little bit, our email inbox or our Gmail or whatever starts to catch on and starts to move things that look like that into spam. And that's that same thing. I think about as we go through treatment, it's kind of correcting our faulty spam filter, if that's something that's helpful for you. Mariella, so glad to have you here and so glad this is relatable. Yeah, Deleuze, anything beyond that initial thought is the compulsion. Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're thinking about something all the time, again and again, great sign that we're probably ruminating. Matthew at 728. Yeah, Matt, I love that you've been giving yourself compassion when you notice that you're ruminating. Again, I think that's one of the best things we can do is we can say, oof, compassion. And also, how do I step forward in this way? Love Lana, so good to see you. Deleuze, I also like the strategy of gaining insight by not trying to gain insight. I relate to this in the biggest way. Um, all of these things I see. Hi from KC. Yeah, Matt, what you're talking about is similar to the shoulders back at 734. Loving Kimberly Quinlan's shrug your shoulders analogy with encouragement for intrusive thoughts. It's an absolute game changer. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, I see Ethan here. Hi, Ethan. That was at 7:35, so I don't know if you're still here, but hello, Ethan. So glad to see you. I told folks you might pop on for a second. He's on Facebook, so if you're on YouTube, sorry, you're not seeing his comments. Let's see. Yes to this, being your actual self, Ethan in the house. Yeah, let's see. I'm going to see if we have some more questions here. Yes. Okay. So I see Sean scary and very exciting at the same time. Thank you for that. I think the biggest thing for me was being open to trying the things I used to enjoy before my OCD got really bad. And that really goes back to kind of the topic I was sharing about tonight, this idea of life being in some ways that biggest exposure and leaning into that. And Sean, I know that is super, super hard. And I am so glad that you're doing that and that you're also willing to share with us on that journey. I see. Yeah. So with intrusive thoughts, often, Kate, we're always trying to figure out, well, what does this mean? Do I like this thought? Did I want to have this thought? Thoughts are just thoughts. They don't mean anything. I always think like we're the person behind our thoughts, kind of deciding what we get to do with those particular thoughts. And Sean's still a work in progress, but has gotten a lot easier. I see Sam at 7:39, the crime show comment. Now you're a part. Oh, awesome. Awesome. Love. Yeah. So I'm a huge crime show kind of fan. And that's been such a transition for me because I used to love them. Then I had really bad harm OCD, was scared to watch them. And now I love them again. And I see it really as an opportunity to fight my OCD. Ooh, and no clue what your why is. I want to hear from folks what your why is. So I'm going to kind of go down and read some because I see these coming in and I'll talk a little bit about mine. I see Matt at 740. My why is freedom. And like you say brilliantly, Katie, is to live a big, beautiful, awesome life that we were created for. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. You are deserving of living a big, beautiful, awesome life. Deleuze, but you shouldn't keep checking the spam folder to check if it's actually spam or not. Yes, that is such a great extension of the analogy. Yeah, no. Once we decide to hit spam, we need to just let it do its thing. And it's kind of like with intrusive thoughts and OCD. I always tell folks if it looks like OCD, if it smells like OCD, if we think it might be OCD, We get to choose to treat it like OCD, but we don't get to keep checking whether or not it's OCD. Don't get to keep checking whether or not we made that right choice. There is no right choice. There's just the best choice that we can make in that moment. So you're totally right. Once we mark it as spam, that's where it is. Could be right, could be wrong, and we are moving on with our life. So thank you for that. Yeah. Mm, thank you, Spence. And love Lana. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and I'm so glad that the scrupulosity and faith and OCD pieces resonate with you as well. Um, welcome, not Ethan. Yeah, Amy, handle the spam ones, then be done with it. And then what was the question, Lana? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna ask again because I want to talk about this for these last 15 minutes or so. My question is, what is your why? Like, why are you willing to risk the scary stuff that OCD says that we're risking? Why are you willing to lean into ERP? Why are you willing to lean into treatment? Why are you willing to do that? Like, what makes it worth it? And for me, there's a lot of things. I'm a huge fan of acceptance and commitment therapy alongside ERP. And I know Ethan is as well, in kind of naming what are these whys that we're continuing to move toward, even when it feels really scary. And for me, I mean, there's so many in kind of the values card sort from ACT that I could go to. But when I'm thinking more tangibly about relationships and about family, I think about Ethan, I think about our kitties, I think about running, I think about, quite honestly, advocating, I think about work and faith in OCD, and I think about my mom. And I know I talk about my mom on this stream often, and her kind of journey with incurable blood cancer, and she's had a tough time recently. She has been doing well. And let's see, I don't want to get super emotional around this right now, but got to spend some time with her a couple weeks ago, and she is such a warrior, not worrier, a warrior like warrior. But she's yeah, there's some aspects of her health that are really challenging and that are really scary, and some things that are happening on top of her cancer treatment. And my why, especially even in visiting her a couple weeks ago, we were heading there, and I got so stuck on something with my OCD. I think sometimes having OCD, we see the world through a fatalistic filter. So I look back on it now. I got this email from someone that I convinced myself that they were so mad at me and I was going to lose everything and my life was going to be over. Turned out it was actually the opposite. The reason they wanted to talk with me was to, like, because I had done something good and it was a congratulatory thing. But again, we see things maybe in a different way. So I was on the way to visit my mom, and I realized I had this really concrete choice. I could choose to try to figure it out all weekend, to try to keep myself safe, to try to make sure I wasn't going to lose everything with this email conversation that I needed to have, and give up the entire time with my mom. Or I could be willing to risk that this person was super pissed off at me and that it was somehow going to ruin my whole career, in favor of doing what I could control in that moment, which was show up and be present with my mom. And I will say it was one of the most present trips that I've been on with my mom. It was beautiful and awesome. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And yes, I got back and I found out that the scary thing wasn't actually all that scary, which is typically what happens. But I would also say, had I gotten back and found out that somebody really was pissed off at me, it still would have been worth it to spend that time in the present with my mom. I still wouldn't have wanted to give up those moments. And that is a really beautiful why for me. So I'm curious. Um, let's see what others are saying, and I can chime in more with this too. Yeah, ACT is such a big game changer, Katya. Absolutely. The loose. I think my why is to give myself a fair chance to manifest change in the world and attain goals that are valuable to me. Wasting this precious life would be such a shame. Deleuze, I love that. And I would actually say, maybe you have, but if you have not already, I would write this down, put this on a sticky note, put this on your mirror. And every time you're making a choice between engaging OCD or engaging in life, I would love for, this sounds kind of harsh, but I would actually love for you to say, do I want to step toward OCD today? or do I want to step towards manifesting change in the world? And that sounds super binary, but really when it comes to OCD, OCD is the one who's created this kind of black and white all or nothing game. And we do kind of only get those two choices. And I would say stepping toward everything that's valuable to you is so worth it. And I know I relate to that. I think for me, some of y'all know I do a lot of faith and OCD work. I have a new faith and OCD community app coming out, which is like been my blood, sweat, and tears alongside doctoral work for a while now. And every time I'm getting stuck in my head or stuck on a compulsion or something like that, Ethan actually will say, "Do you want to do the app? Like, do you want to throw that away? Because like we can have you quit everything like right now." And I'm like, no, that's everything I care about. And this sounds really harsh. Him and I are harsh and compassionate with each other. But he's like, then stop giving into OCD. Like, if you want to do this thing that's meaningful to you, be willing to risk all the scary stuff so that you can step towards your values. And that for me has been so helpful in a compassionate and also like warrior kind of way. Sam, perhaps my why is that I have seen the person was incapable of being, oh, that you were incapable of being, and notice that I have so much ahead of me. I'm willing to do this to get back my life. I work with kids every day again and more. Sam, I love that. Again, sticky note, put that somewhere for yourself. I love that. Yeah, Nathan, relating to seeing life through a fatalistic filter. Yeah, I always think like it's and we kind of go through treatment and we like take off the OCD glasses and we're like, whoa, huh? Like maybe not everything is falling apart all the time. But it's amazing how OCD makes us feel like that. Sean, my why for challenging OCD is so that I can live a life helping others and be able to fully engage in the things that are meaningful to me. Again, sticky note somewhere. I love that. Mm. Deleuze, I also think taking on more and more responsibility is another muscle that I need to work on. That's such great self-awareness and just such a great thing to know and to lean into as a part of what's meaningful to you. Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you for the kind words. Amy at 749, OCD took away what I value most and decided it was worth taking, and you decided it was worth taking the risk to get it back. Turned out OCD was lying and I wasn't scared of the threats any longer. Y'all, Amy is amazing. Like, we have Matt and Amy here, like back to back to back, and they are two just stellar advocates in this community. And Amy, I love your passion on here and also your passion in support groups and in so many different spaces. And I will say, you have been such an inspiration to me in the way that I know in ups and downs in your journey, you always come out swinging and are like, OCD's a liar. And you really are willing to like put your shoulders back and risk it for this life that you are so worthy of living. And you are helping so many others do the same. So thank you for all that you do. Hmm. Oh, Liz at 749. So for anyone who does not know, Liz Smith, if you are on the Facebook side, that is Ethan's mom. That is my mother-in-law now that we're married. And thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Liz. I see Sam at 749. I also think about my dog and my twin brother and close friends and how important they are to me outside of the OCD realm. Yes, despite maybe having OCD in common at times, also relate to my mom and cancer. Yeah, absolutely, Sam. Absolutely. Um, yeah, just thinking about all of those things. And I think about pets and family, your twin. I mean, these are all such great reasons of we get to choose to be present. Well, and I guess so. Here's what I'll say too. Different people are in different spaces with functioning or not functioning with OCD, and I know we all have different challenges with that. Ethan and I, in our journeys, were in very different spaces. For me, I was always really high functioning, but I was really miserable, and I eventually hit rock bottom and hit a pretty dark space. But even in times when I was functioning, what looked like really well, I wasn't there. I wasn't present. It's like lights were on, but nobody was home. I was living two parallel lives, the one of someone externally who looked like they were achieving, and then the one that was ruminating 24/7 and hated myself and hated my life. And the carrot for me became not just being there in bodily form in the things that I was doing, um, but actually showing up mentally and emotionally and spiritually and being able to be present in life with dog, twin brother, friend. I mean, I don't have a dog or a twin brother, but I'm just resonating with you, Sam. But for me, family and kitties and all the things. Yeah, love Lana because who knows how long we'll live this journey. Yeah, and I mean, my whole role before this was actually around grief and trauma and loss, and I still do some work in this area. And there were challenges with that with OCD, and also this element of wanting to embrace every single awesome moment that we have as a gift. Yeah, Matt, thank you for the app. Super excited about that. Um, yeah, Deleuze, I wonder how you have dealt with responsibility in your life and how you continue to face OCD even when you have more responsibilities elsewhere. Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm happy if you want to send me an email to kind of tell me more about what you're navigating specifically to go into that. I know this looks different for different people. I think actually for me, um, it's really dicey because over responsibility with OCD has always been such a huge component for me. So, actually, taking on responsibilities at certain points in my life have become really, really compulsive. Where if I was really struggling, I would take on 50,000 different things to kind of cover up what I was navigating with my OCD. And for the most part, I would do really well with those responsibilities, but then would be internally struggling in really big ways. I know there are different ways this manifests for folks. This is kind of how it showed up for me with my OCD. But what I like to tell people, whatever this looks like for you, is uh, thinking about, I know for you, you're asking about responsibilities in life. How do we face OCD? How do we do this? Think about what's important to you. It doesn't mean we need to tack on like all the responsibilities right now. But is there one thing that's really significant to you that you want to be doing right now that OCD has maybe been taking away or that OCD has made really scary or really challenging? How do we start by adding that one thing and giving yourself compassion to not do it perfectly, but to continue to kind of step toward that? And then to maybe add another thing that's really significant to you. And again, I'm happy to talk more about that with you offline. Um, yeah, Phyllis, cancer is bad, but also a gift too. It clarifies things. Yeah, it's been so interesting, especially this last trip. And I sometimes struggle with my mom's diagnosis a lot more than she does. And that's been such a journey too. But I was talking with her the last trip because she was having some instances with she has weekly infusions and she was passing out with actually some of them. And it was really upsetting me. And I was like, how can you deal with the uncertainty of not knowing what's going to happen with your health tomorrow? And she was like, I don't know. She's like, well, I'm just living today. What does it matter what happens tomorrow? And I was like, what? How do you do this? And it's really, I mean, she is such a warrior and she really inspires me in that way, just in big, 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 big ways. So Phyllis, sending you love in the midst of your own health struggles. And please know that we're here with you in the midst of that. Jen, my why is because I brought 5 beautiful lives into this world who deserve for me to fight to be 100% of who I'm capable of. Yes. Love this. Stick that on your mirror somewhere. Spence, I'm having a pretty good brain day. I'm dealing with thoughts on my terms and not OCD's. My whys are like, why nots? Okay, Blake, that needs to be, you need to trademark that, Spence. My whys are like, why nots? That's awesome. Deleuze, I still believe I cannot handle certain amounts of responsibility because the OCD will be the end of me if I had that much on my plate. Yeah. So Deleuze, and that's why I was saying, I'm wondering, is there something small that you can start with that's really meaningful to you? Because I also wonder if the fear of not being able to handle things that are meaningful to you is preventing you from doing things that are meaningful. And it doesn't mean we have to do all of the things, but maybe starting with one thing that OCD makes you feel like you can't do that you really want to do is a really great first step forward. And knowing that, again, it doesn't mean you have to do it perfectly. So I'm curious. And again, if you want to email me, I'm curious kind of what you're thinking and would love to support you. Love Lana. I want to make many more great memories with all of my loved ones in the meantime. Absolutely. And Phyllis, thank you for the kind words. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, she has multiple myeloma and she's had breast cancer a few times on top of it, among some other diagnoses. And it is a challenge. And I'm so sorry that you have navigated blood cancer too, and sending you lots of love. And our hearts are with you. Sean, couldn't agree more. In residential, I had my why statement taped on my mirror. Yes, this is like my favorite thing. So I was constantly reminded of it. It really helped me see the bigger picture and kept me going through treatment. Love this. Sam, also knowing how much work I've done and how much further this has brought me. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, y'all, I know we're like out of time and I see all of these questions. Okay, I'm going to scroll through really quick to make sure that there's not any more questions to kind of hit on here. Sorry. Um, mm, Love this. Yeah. And the spiritual piece for me has been significant, but everybody's journey with that too looks different to lose. Oh, stick with the ick. Yes, Matt. Thank you. Sangeeta, I see at 7:55 asking where to find a good therapist. So I'm a huge believer in exposure and response prevention with a licensed provider. I am somebody who always acknowledges that I know there are challenges in different spaces and financially with getting that treatment, but the IOCDF does a really awesome job. And I know Brennan will behind the scenes help me drop a link to our resource directory. The IOCDF resource directory is awesome, and you can actually find a licensed provider in your area. And I think that can be really huge. I know that for folks who are international, No CD and Beyond Borders has really great options as well. And if treatment is not something that's feasible for anybody who's listening, there's also some really great self-help resources from Reed Wilson and Kim Quinlan. And we recently did a live stream about those as well. But first place I always send folks is the IOCDF resource directory. Hey, Ethan looks prettier here. Chris Tronston, are you throwing me shade? Oh my goodness. Shame. Just kidding. Love you, Chris. Let's see. Is this? Yeah, and Chris, we are looking forward to your live stream with Liz tomorrow. Did I hit everything? IOCDF network, accepting uncertainty is easier when we trust that we can manage things. Doesn't mean we approve things. Yes, Amy. All of this. Okay, awesome. I think I hit on everything, like 2 minutes over. Sorry, Brennan behind the scenes, but I'm going to close this out really quick. So first of all, thank you all. This has been such a stellar conversation tonight about our whys and about values, willing to risk the scary stuff. Life is an exposure. And I so appreciate you all being willing to advocate with each other, alongside each other, for each other. I mean, just such a cool thing. So thank y'all for being here tonight. And as we close out, I do want to say that we would love to hear from you. You can take our live stream survey to tell us what you'd like to see on this platform. We look forward to your feedback. This survey can be found at iocdf.org/livestream survey. And registration for the online BDD conference is now open. The online BDD conference offers an opportunity for professionals to learn how to treat individuals with body dysmorphic disorder. Learn more and register today at iocdf.org/BDDcon. I also have to throw in here, FaithCon registration is open too. So please first register for BDDcon because that's first. And then head over and register for the Faith and OCD conference on April 18th because we are super excited to have you there too. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can remember that this live stream is one of many. You can see the whole schedule of future streams at iocdf.org/livestreams. You can also view recordings of past live streams, as well as watch our hosts answer your pre-submitted questions on IOCDF's YouTube channel, youtube.com/IOCDF. Finally, you can like and subscribe to get notified when live streams are scheduled, and you can sign up for the IOCDF news and updates. And if you need resources or are looking for a therapist, please visit iocdf.org. The IOCDF is a donor-supported nonprofit, so please consider making a donation at iocdf.org/donate. And finally, as we head into the rest of this week, please come back here with Chris and Liz tomorrow. And Chris is props in his trench coat. Y'all, Chris, if you are still on, I really do love you. And I kind of want to get on and just to pick on slash be nice to you and Liz tomorrow now too. But Chris and Liz will be back here, right here, same place at 12 p.m. Eastern. And I know they would love to hear from you. I know they would love for you to continue with this awesome advocacy. They would love to answer your questions, all the things. And now that I am officially 5 minutes over, I am going to stop talking and say just thank you all for being you. And take what we did tonight. I would love to have you take your why, tape it up to a mirror, and remember that regardless of what OCD says, you are so incredibly worthy of a big, beautiful, awesome life. See y'all next time.